Who was the real father of Bjorn Ironside? Sometimes even devoted fans of Vikings can't get the lore straight. It can be really confusing to figure everything out, especially if you've just recently binged the show. But did you know that the show actually strayed away from complete historical accuracy? The real-life history might just be as interesting as the television version. Curious to hear more? Well then, buckle up! We have a lot of lore to get into, both fictional and real. First off, let's start off with the show. Before we really begin to dissect the lore behind the show, we need to answer a big question first. Who was the real father of Bjorn Ironside in the Vikings show? The show spent a lot of time building up this mystery. Not even the characters knew who Bjorn's father was. It was down to Ragnar or his brother Rollo. Over the course of 6 seasons, there really hasn't been a mystery bigger than this one. So, what's the answer? Well, in the Season 5 Part 1 finale, Rollo offers Lagertha and Bjorn safe passage to Francia.
We'll give you safe passage back to Francia. Neither Harold nor I me.
Just so we're all aware of the relations between these three, here's a rundown. Bjorn is the nephew of Rollo, or so we thought, as his father is Rollo's brother. Lagertha is Bjorn's mother and Rollo's former lover. Are you getting confused yet? Because I sure am. But there's so much more to go over, so keep up. When Lagertha and Bjorn reject the safe passage they were granted, Rollo reveals an absolute bombshell.
You know I have always loved you, Lagertha. And that Bjorn is my son.
He is not your son.
You cannot deny it to my face.
Rollo revealed that he was actually Bjorn's real father, not his brother, who also happens to be a Viking legend. Crazy, right? But just wait, there's more. When Rollo makes the declaration that he is the true father of Bjorn, naturally there are a few questions. Here's the answer to them all. You see, the original season of Vikings was initially about the legendary Norse figure Ragnar Lothbrok, whom we presumed was Bjorn's true father.
I always knew in my heart that I would see you again.
It was of him I was speaking.
You have your father's eyes, unfortunately.
Why, unfortunately?
But the story gradually progressed into being about the children of Ragnar and his fellow Vikings, making them the new and improved main characters. Why is this important to what we're talking about? Well, when Rollo makes this announcement, it could initially be confusing to dedicated fans who've watched from the beginning. Back in the first season, it didn't appear that Rollo was with Lagertha because she was with Ragnar. But did you know that years before that first season took place, Rollo and Lagertha were lovers? That's right. Long before she was with Bjorn's previously presumed father, she was with his brother Rollo, who, by the way, was incredibly devastated when she married his brother. But it just gets you thinking. Without the drama of television and a team of writers perfectly manufacturing the story, what really happened? With a show like this one, it can be hard for anyone to tell whether what we're watching is fact or fiction. Here are the real facts. Ragnar Lothbrok was actually a famous Viking, and he really did have kids, but he and Rollo were not brothers, which is admittedly very confusing at first. In the show, the two brothers have a strained relationship, mostly because they were in love with the same woman, but in real life, they weren't brothers at all. So who was Rollo? Well, for one thing, he wasn't related to Ragnar, and he wasn't the father of Bjorn. Mind blown already? Here's some information about the real Rollo.
I am who I am. And I won't change. Not for you. Not for my brother. Not for anyone.
Rollo was actually a Scandinavian Viking, and he became the first ruler of Normandy in 911. He became the first ruler after the events of the Siege of Chartres in 911. That was when Charles the Simple, the king of West Francia, ceded some land that is now recognized as present-day Rouen to Rollo and the Vikings. He was also married to Papa of Bayeux, and all of their descendants and followers were named the Normans. What's even more interesting is that he was actually the great-great-grandfather of William the Conqueror, who became the first Norman king of England. Pretty interesting stuff, right? So no, in real life he was not Bjorn's father, but in the show, he is. Speaking of Bjorn, who was he really? Well, let's take a look. Bjorn Ironside was a Norse Viking chief and also a Swedish king. This information comes from the 12th and 13th century Scandinavian histories. He was the son of the notorious Viking king, whom we know from our show to be Ragnar Lothbrok. He lived in the 9th century somewhere between 855 and 858, and is also said to have been the first ruler of the Swedish Munzo dynasty. Wow, that's some pretty cool history, even if it's almost nothing like the show. In our favorite Viking TV show, Bjorn was the son of Rollo, who was the brother of Ragnar Lothbrok. However, in both the TV show and the history books, one man's legacy stays the same: Ragnar Lothbrok. Ragnar Lothbrok, which translates to Ragnar Hairy Breeches, was a Viking hero and a Swedish and Danish king. He is famous in Old Norse poetry of the Viking Age, Icelandic sagas, and even near contemporary chronicles.
I feel so old. I have lost it inside. I'm tired and distressed. I cannot stop thinking about that.
He made himself known by being the head of many different raids against the British Isles and the Holy Roman Empire during the 9th century. He was, and still is, incredibly legendary, and the Viking show doesn't downplay that. But there's one thing you should know: Ragnar most likely never even existed. Yeah, sorry to just drop that bomb on you, but it's true. At least he didn't exist the way he's portrayed in the show or the legends from history. Let me explain. The general consensus among scholars these days is that the Ragnar we know from the legends is most likely based on the Viking leader Regineri, or Reginfred, 9th century CE, who is solely known for the 845 CE siege of Paris. There are other potentials on whom he could have been based, but the general belief is that he was a myth or a legend. Therefore, everything you see in the show is most likely derived from the legends about him, not from fact, which doesn't make it any less interesting. There are still tons of myths and legends to catch up on if you want to read them historically. But for now, let's stick to learning the truth about our beloved characters, like Bjorn Ironside. If Rollo is the father in the show, then who was his father in real life? Well, we actually might not know. The father of Bjorn is something that's constantly debated among scholars. They probably debate even more than the fans of his fictional counterpart. While some scholars suggest that his father had to have been Ragnar, others are not too sure. But the general thought is that he was the son of a famed Viking leader, because after all, how else would he have gotten to where he did if he wasn't the son of a king? Since in real life, we actually have no way to tell who his father is.
It was always my father's dream.
To find land to farm for young folks and to live peacefully with others. Now, my dream also.
The show seemed to take that as an opportunity to add some mystery and intrigue to the storyline. Throughout the entire series' run, we are constantly questioning who his true father is. And now that we know the same is true for scholars in real life, it makes that aspect of his character that much more interesting. It's cool to see the background knowledge behind the writer's choices. Isn't it interesting how they managed to take an old age mystery and make it a major source of mystery throughout the entire series? After all, we only found out who Bjorn's real father was in the show's 5th season. It certainly left a lot to the imagination, much like the history behind it. That was this Viking secret revealed. Now you know who the real father of Bjorn Ironside is.